I'm Drew Richardson here with ESTv, and at King's, we have all heard the references of New York City being a part of our campus. But is this campus accessible to all students? Most college campuses are on plots of land that are built specifically for all types of students, as well as accommodating to students with disabilities. At King's, our campus is located in downtown Manhattan with housing in Brooklyn. If a person with a disability were to attend the King's College, would they even be able to comfortably commute to campus?
I will say this is just kind of like a precursor. I can't walk. I am an ambulatory wheelchair user. And a lot of people don't assume that about me. I can. So basically I can walk upstairs, however it does fatigue me a lot, and I prefer not to. And I cannot carry my wheelchair by myself or even remotely begin to even attempt that. So whenever I'm on a platform and there's an elevator is broken, I either have to go to the next platform that's accessible, which can be a little bit of a ways sometimes, and Uber back, or if that isn't an option, I have to ask somebody on the platform to carry up my wheelchair. Especially like when my wheels get stuck, like people do help me. Like I have not had a moment where I'm like, hello, and nobody hasn't come like rushing to help me out. So I will say that. Although I do not like having to, I guess, depend on strangers, because you don't know. So there's just a little uncertainty there.
The MTA subway is an artifact from a world before the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. Since subway stations were built in the first half of the 20th century, the MTA is still playing catch-up today to make public spaces accessible. There's been some improvements, like elevators in several stations, but right now, only 126 out of 472 stations are accessible.
The MTA has plans to make stations 98% accessible by 2055, but that's still a long way off, and there's already been delays. Other than elevators, there's still a lot of times in older cars especially, the platforms do not align, and technically at the boarding car, the conductor car, that's the usual boarding area, but with a lot of the older cars, there's still a big gap. I was coming home one night, and it was a little bit late. Basically, my friend was like pushing my chair up because it was 1 a.m. and I was trying to go back in the subway. Because of the gap, my front wheels always get stuck in there because I usually back up whenever there's a gap. So my friend was trying to push it up, my front wheels, and this part of my wheelchair actually fell off. The truth of the matter is, if you're not actively experiencing something, oftentimes you shove it to the side. Definitely notice that with a lot of like accessibility and things. It kind of does take somebody in a wheelchair being like, hey, this isn't okay, as like a wake-up call for a lot of these businesses, because it's very common. Yeah, New York in general is kind of terrible with accessibility, but nowhere is great. I'm from LA area, so I mean, I'm not coming from greatness either. Broken sidewalks or cracked sidewalks that kind of push me into the street, that's kind of the norm. But I didn't really expect like a utopia here. I mean, that would be silly too. But yeah, in general, New York City, like beyond the subway, is still not great. And there have been so many times where I'm like, oh, I might go to this place, and I'm like, oh wait, there's a stop to get in. And it's these easy things that people oftentimes don't think about that should be. But it's not even just like maybe like 1 or 2 steps. Like oftentimes there's like stairs. Yeah, so it's just things like that where I just have to like kind of plan.
So can you even know beforehand?
Yes.
Is there like a system that tells you if stuff is down
my
or not?
MTA app actually tells me if elevators are broken.
Is it accurate or is
No.
Wow.
My MTA app is not as accurate as I'd like it to be. There are a lot of times where it's not updated, and I have unfortunately been at the brunt of that.
Public transportation in New York still has a long way to go before it's accessible for everyone. The MTA is taking steps towards a more accessible future, planning to renovate 81 subway stations and Staten Island railway stations to be accessible by 2025. This is a welcome stride, but still less than half of subway stations will be accessible. With ESTv, I'm Drew Richardson.